Hey guys, Dylan from the Geek Duo here, and in today's episode, I'll be bringing you my read-through of My Hero Academia Chapter 287. Now, there's something I need to explain about last week's chapter. When I said later in the chapter, when it looked like All For One was holding Shigaraki down, like had his hand on his neck and that, I was incorrect in what I was seeing in that panel, because it was later a higher res image came out and you can actually see that All For One and Shigaraki, their bodies are merged. Like All For One is coming out of Shigaraki's body. His right arm is actually trapped inside Shigaraki's neck in that. So rather than holding him down, he's actually inside his neck. I just felt that, well, I needed to clarify that because that has implications for this chapter and it didn't make a lot of sense with what I said last week. Also, this video is coming out a little later than the last two did because, well, I had a mishap with recording this the first time, and let's just say there was no sound. So this is my second attempt, which means it'll come out a few hours later. Anyway, this chapter picks up in the exact moment that the last one finished, with All For One, Shigaraki, Midoriya, and Nana Shimura inside the vestige world of One For All. It starts with a full page image of Nana Shimura addressing All For One, and she says, "To think we'd be meeting after my passing, All For One." Now, it zooms out and behind to show the distance between the two groups, both apprentice and older generation's mentors, I guess you could say, because, yeah, technically they're both mentoring the current users. And Midoriya thinks to himself, Nana Shimura? Wait, we're inside One For All. What happened? Kachan, is everyone okay? Before he can vocalize these questions in the best way he can without a mouth, he's interrupted by All For One, who picks up Shigaraki's head by his hair and says, "Look at that, Tomura. A corpse is talking. Not just any corpse, but your grandmother, the sorrowful and pathetic Nana Shimura." He goes on to do a sort of he goes on to do a sort of he goes on to give a long-winded monologue, sort of explaining to the readers, and I guess Midoriya and Shigaraki, what exactly is happening in this scene. And before I start, I just want to say that no, this does not fall into the writer's foil, because it is explaining it in a room with people who don't know what's going on, whereas the writer's foil for this scenario would be going over events and explaining them to people only who know what's happening. Anyway, I just want to point out another reason I enjoy this, because it doesn't fall into writing traps like that. But anyway, All for One says, in the past, there were accounts of patients who underwent organ transplants, having their personalities adopt one similar to their donors. Most dismissed it as some occult superstition, but I've experienced the same phenomena myself. I would sometimes have riveting dreams featuring the holders of the various quirks I had seized. Whenever it happened, I was disheartened, left with a similar feeling of guilt as them. Interestingly, however, the moment I relinquished said quirk, the ghost of the original holder would never come to haunt me again. How eerie is that? And I consider myself a skeptic. However, it was my meeting with the doctor when I fully realized what was going on. Much like organs, whose cells hold the memory and personality of those who donated it, the same consciousness manifests within the shape of our quirks. Until now, I've always thought that being able to converse with those whose quirks I've adopted was a privilege exclusively to myself. At the same time that he's going into this explanation, Shigaraki is sitting there thinking to himself. He thinks back to what Gran Torino said to him on the battlefield. Quit trampling over Shimura's memory. Nana Shimura? Grandmother, why are you here? He thinks to the image that his sister showed to him that day in their father's study. And he thinks to when he awakened All for One, how Nana was there too. Now, it goes back to All for One saying, and now I've cursed my own younger brother to have his consciousness bound to his own quirk. I can only imagine how it would feel to be the next holder of One for All, cursed to have their personalities live in this blighted plane of existence for eternity. Was that an appropriate greeting? Nana Shimura, the savage she is, just completely disregards everything that All for One just says, and instead addresses Shigaraki. You're Kotaro's son. At the same time, Shigaraki is addressing her. Whatever the reason that you're here, don't worry, grandmother. I blame you too. Suddenly, a decay wave surges forth from Shigaraki in the direction of Nana and Midoriya. But just as quickly as it starts, it stopped. We see Nana Shimura has both her hands out, and she's using her will, her small grasp over the plane of the vestige world, to impose itself on her surroundings and stop the decay wave from approaching any further. Midoriya still thinks to himself, One for All is being eroded? Well done, Tamura. Your will is already being reciprocated. All for One's policy of moving in accordance to the wielder's willpower is responding to your unquenchable rage. Now, this is funny because One for All's policy of moving in accordance to its wielder's willpower has never worked for Midoriya. But just as All for One, have I been saying All for One or One for All? I don't know. Anyway, just as he was congratulating his ward, he notices that there's decay waves running up him as well. Oh dear, is that how it is? It seems you detest me as well. Brilliant. This is the birth of a symbol of fear. Now, we actually see that in this panel, as more of All for One is emerging from Shigaraki, more of Shigaraki is being consumed by All for One, because we now see the entire upper body and the beginning of his hips coming out of Shigaraki. But we also see that the right side of Shigaraki's torso is no longer visible, as he was again congratulating his ward. He again got interrupted, this time by a voice calling out, "Halt." Though it does seem to be enough, considering my brother can be just as stubborn at times. Manipulating this kid this time, brother? It will save all of us a lot of time if you would just hand over the power to me. One for All raises his hands to add his will to that of Nanashimura, and as he does so, he says, "We won't be going with you. We have chosen to remain with this boy." And the application of the original wielder's will, having grown this whole time, is enough to actively push back the decay wave, to push back the darkness that has been emanating from behind All for One. And Shigaraki, he notices this. He thinks, now I'm getting pushed back. This power that Master couldn't control for himself. What the hell? At this moment, we see All for One yank his hand out of Shigaraki's neck, and we get a full image of the state that Shigaraki is already in. Only a third of his torso, I had to make sure I was doing the right side, it's visible. That being his left arm, and from this hip up to this shoulder and his head, that's all that was left of him. But when we see All for One yank his hand out, suddenly there's no more of Shigaraki's torso. It's just his head. And it looks like you can see him, like the age wearing on him. His skin is wrinkling up, like his vitality is being taken over. And All for One screams, "Power, Shimura. If your strength is combined with mine, then I can take it. Then these ghosts from my past victories can finally be put to rest." He sticks out his hand, activating his absorption quirk, the hole in his hand, sucking in all that is in front of him. We see pieces of Nana and of One for All being drawn with that of the vestige world, and All for One continues to gloat. "Little brother, you said you've chosen to stay with him. Quit pretending you're so strong. Shouldn't you know by now? I've been watching through Tamura. This boy doesn't know how to make use of such an excellent power. He couldn't even protect his friends or his teacher, and instead needed protection himself. If that wasn't enough, he let himself be consumed by rage, just like his teacher, until finally he's frozen on the ground, unable to move anything but his eyeballs back and forth. Leaving this power to such a simpleton was your mistake." Now this next panel. It's a double page spread that's been compressed into so that it would fit in the proper borders, so I had to open it in a new tab. He was not a mistake. Someone like you, brother, who only takes advantage of others, wouldn't understand. No matter what, this boy will spill his own blood for others. He becomes enraged for others, and without limit and without fail, he picks himself up. He's a boy possessed by the need to save others, despite his common sense. This power will stick with this boy. As he's saying this, we get a picture of one for all. Just the bottom half of his face, so he mirrors his brother. We see all for one, smiling, the decay waves receding from his face. We see a look of anguish on Midoriya's face as he pushes his hand into the ground. In the last image we see before the main part of this double spread is Shigaraki, or what's left of him. All that's left is the top half of his face, and that is quickly being absorbed into All for One. And seeing this, Midoriya, he acts out exactly what One for All was saying. Despite his common sense, he launches himself towards the greatest evil he's ever met to try and save him from being absorbed by his teacher. And suddenly, we're back outside the vestige world as a bright light explodes from the two wielders, and they begin to fall back to the ground. Midoriya thinks to himself as he's falling, I didn't lose this power, but Shigaraki, please, don't move anymore. At the same time, Shigaraki, whose body is still burnt, showing how little real time actually passed while they were in there, inside his head, All for One is talking to him. He says, Domura, your body and quirk were not completely stabilized, so you were unable to put all your strength into taking this quirk. You won't lose your mind. You just need to perfect your body. Now, take a step back and replenish your energy. It looks like Shigaraki. I can't tell if he's smiling or if his lips and facial muscles are just permanent, stuck like that till they can actually regenerate. But it looks like he's knocked out for the moment being anyway. But that's all we see of the main battle, because we suddenly cut to a scene of carnage as Gigantomachia tears through yet another town. And on his back, the League of Villains, they're just having chats among themselves. The first chat we see is between Darby and Skeptic. Darby says, Shigaraki and Endeavor? Oh, that sounds exciting. Get ready. Get ready for what? We're about to liberate this good-for-nothing hero society. And Darby has the widest, most genuine, happy expression we've seen on his face. Because normally it's a maniacal smile, but this looks like boyish wonder, boyish joy. Like the smile you see on a little kid on Christmas Day. Over by another one of Gigantomachia's back spikes, we see a different kind of conversation being taken. We see Mr. Compress and Toga. Toga-chan, are you alright? It's dangerous to stand on the ledge. You were looking for them earlier, weren't you? the UA kids you love, even though they're heroes. Now this is going to be a bit cringy because, well, I'm going to be trying a feminine voice for Toga. Just fair warning. At what point do they draw the line? If a hero's duty is to save people, was Jin-kun not a person to them? Will they kill me as well? I'd like to ask that question to them, to Deku-kun, to Ochako-chan. Depending on their answer, yeah, I'll be alright. Now, again, I apologize for that voice. I've never been able to do a feminine voice, so I just put on a higher pitched, more soft spoken. I know that's stereotypes and all that, but it's the only way I can actively distinguish my normal voice and when I'm trying to be a female character. Anyway, I am trying to add more voices into this because, well, I think it adds a little extra element to this, like makes it more immersive, I guess. But this was another really good chapter, and there are through a few main points that really spell out future events. They confirm what I was thinking in the last chapters. Because, well, here's the thing. I said last chapter that Shigaraki, he's gonna put it together that the person that Gran Torino was talking about and his grandmother, they're the same person. He's gonna see that she's standing behind Midoriya, implying that she must have had some connection to the power that they're trying to invade. That he's going to find out that, well, for one, killed her. All three of these happened within the first 2/3 of this chapter. We see, and I'm going to count on the 4th page. That was 3. On the 4th page, we see Shigaraki putting together that Nana and the person the old man was talking about are the same person. We see him questioning why she's there. Now, before we get to the other one, the panel that says, "Whatever the reason, don't worry, grandmother, I blame you too." I've actually seen that translated a different way. Because this is right after All For One finished his spiel about how pathetic she is and asks, "Is that an appropriate greeting?" He's in the other translation I've seen, "Whatever the reason, I'm sure you've got hate inside you too." And this actually makes sense paired with the image of, well, a couple pages later, as the decay wave is stopped from reaching Midoriya and Nana, and instead goes up All For One. And, well, on one hand, you've got him saying, "Look, I hate you, Dad hated you." I'm not sure if it's I hate you because Dad hated you, I hate you because of what Dad took his hatred out of you on me, or I hate you because you were here. There are 3 ways of reading that. The other one is, I hate this guy too. Look, he's a parasite. He's literally absorbing me to gain his own body. And I want to believe that the second one, because it comes from a more reputable translation, is the more accurate one. And so that is the first act of defiance of several that we see from Shigaraki towards All for One. The first is saying, you've got hate for him as well. The second is actively trying to decay him. The third is resisting him from absorbing all of his strength in that. And if he does stop the fight, he hears Midoriya pleading, don't move anymore, and he listens, sure, he's gonna get captured, but All for One is telling him, retreat, save up your strength. That act of defiance, he's going to be taken to Tartarus. He's going to be taken directly to the person who, for part 3, admits that he killed his grandmother. Because Shigaraki never knew that before. And I'm going to say it was a Freudian slip. I think that's correct terminology. Because when we see him actively try to resist the pull of All for One, because in the time from when it started to that point is a semi-equivalent, like not quite equivalent but close to the time between when Shigaraki hears All for One admit he killed his grandmother and them exiting the Vestige World. So in the time from the start to hearing that his grandmother was killed, a good 90% of his body was absorbed. From hearing that his grandmother was killed by All for One to leaving the Vestige World, 5% of his body was absorbed. So you see, he's fighting. All for One is requesting that, give me your strength and this will be over. And he's like, no. I also think that seeing Midoriya, despite all the pain that Shigaraki's been through, leaping to save him, I reckon it was a joint effort that blasted them out of the Vestige World. Like, sure, I think if both parties didn't want to get out of there, then Midoriya could have reached Shigaraki. We don't know what would have happened if he did, but yeah, he could have tried to save Shigaraki, but they both needed to get out of there. They were both actively fighting the forces of All for One and One for All to get out of there. And so they did. Now, the final part of this chapter that I want to talk about is the interaction between Toga and Mr. Compress, because this makes a lot of sense and is a great character moment for Toga, because up until this point we've never seen her really serious. We always see her either prancing along, giggling, joking. Sure, we've seen her panicked when she was exploded by Curious, but even then, she still had some of her excitement, I'd say. But now, none of that's there. And I think what she's saying is very important. That a hero's duty is to protect people, to save people. They're not supposed to kill people. So, by killing twice, they're basically saying that they don't see heroes and villains as equal. They don't see villains as people. Now, yes, I know that had Twice not been taken out, then he would have activated his quirk and he would have taken down that whole engine, taken out all the heroes, and yeah. But think of yourself in the universe from his closest friend's perspective. He's been betrayed time and time again. He was betrayed by Overhaul, and now he's been betrayed by the heroes as well. Like, you can see why Toga, she's not happy. She's serious now. And she needs to know if the two people she actually loves, Midoriya and Uraraka, she needs to know whether they do the same thing. Like, we as a reader know that both of them, under no circumstances, would kill. At least not intentionally. But Toga, she doesn't. And she needs to have that closure that there are still people that on that side that are good. I'm not really explaining this in the way that I want to, because, well, what I'm thinking I'm trying to say is not actually the way in which it's coming out, because basically I'm just going to repeat the last sentence she says. I want to ask Midoriya-kun, Ochako-chan, a question as to whether Jin was a person in their eyes. And depending on their answer, decides whether I'll be okay. Like, if Midoriya or Uraraka say, yeah, we would have taken him out too, she's not going to be okay, because it's one thing to have a hero take out your closest friend. It's another to have a person that you're deeply in love with say, I don't consider you a person. Because if they don't see Twice as a person, then they don't see villains as people, which means they don't see Toga as a person. And, well, we know that line, they're not going to say it. They wouldn't cross that line actively. So I reckon that's going to not really make Toga happy, but more take a burden off her shoulders and say, it was one bad hero, not the people that I want to be with, or well, I want to be, full stop. Anyway, that was closer to what I wanted to say, but it's not going to come out right, so I'm just going to stop trying. I really liked this chapter. Right now I'm trying to see whether there's a break. It doesn't look like there is, so should be back next week. at the regularly scheduled time of 4 a.m. here. But yeah, if you like this video, consider giving it a comment down below. Discuss what you liked about it, because look, I don't care if you subscribe to the channel. I don't care if you like it. Some people do it anyway. Most people won't. I'm making this for me because I want to actually have a communication with you. So rather than saying, oh, like my channel, subscribe, hit that bell, just comment. Just say hi. Just say if you think my theories are correct, if you have different interpretations, or you just wanted to point out small details like the fact that All for One was merged with Shigaraki in the last chapter, because I enjoy that a lot more than just a faceless number of people saying, yeah, good job, but not actually saying what they liked. Anyway, I'm rambling because it's 5:30 in the morning, so I'll catch you in the next one.